Hello and welcome to Indus News live from Islamabad. I'm Jawad Tehami and these are the headlines. Armenian President Sarkisyan has removed its National Security Service Director Argishti from his post. This comes after 30 more Armenian soldiers were killed in clashes with Azeri forces over the Nagorno-Karabakh region. Meanwhile, the US, France and Russia have stepped up efforts to end the fighting. The Taliban have welcomed President Donald Trump's statement that all US troops will be back home by the end of this year. In a statement, the Taliban said they hope for good relations with all the countries in the future. This comes on the 19th anniversary of American invasion of Afghanistan. Kyrgyz security forces have demanded all the political parties sit down for talks and restore the rule of law. In a statement, the National Security Committee said the forces will not be used as a tool by any party. Earlier, Kremlin said it has obligations under an existing security treaty to prevent the situation from totally breaking down. American poet Louise Gleish has won the 2020 Nobel Prize in Literature. The Swedish Academy said her poetry focuses on themes such as death, childhood and family life. A professor at Yale University, Gleish is seen as one of the most prominent poets in American contemporary literature. The global coronavirus cases tally has surpassed 36 million with over 1 million fatalities. India has registered 971 deaths and over 78,000 new cases overnight, with infections tally crossing 6.8 million. In Pakistan, 9 people lost their lives to the virus overnight, taking the death toll to 6,544. Those were the headlines and detailed stories right after a short break. Welcome back, and now for the news in detail. The Taliban have welcomed President Donald Trump's statement that all US troops will be back home by the end of this year. In a statement, the Taliban said they hope for good relations with all the countries, including the US, in the future. The group said it is committed to fulfilling all its commitments under the peace agreement with the US. Meanwhile, Russia said Trump's move is pre-election rhetoric to show his voters that he fulfilled his promises. Presidential advisor Zamir Kabulov said the military presence in Afghanistan is not improving the on-ground situation. Earlier, U.S. National Security Advisor Robert O'Brien said the number of the troops will be cut down to 2,500 by early 2021. This comes on the 19th anniversary of American invasion of Afghanistan. In Doha, the Afghan government and the Taliban are engaged in peace talks aimed at ending the war. Armenian President Sarkisyan has removed its National Security Service Director Argishti from his post. Sarkisyan has appointed Hamad Zumyan as the acting director of the NSS.
Armenia says 30 more soldiers have been killed in fighting with Azerbaijan over the Nagorno-Karabakh region. The Defense Ministry said this has pushed the military death toll to 350 since the war started on September 27. Earlier, France, the United States and Russia announced to step up efforts to end fighting between Azeri and ethnic Armenian forces. France's Foreign Minister Jean-Yves Le Drian said representatives from the three countries will meet in Moscow on Monday to seek a ceasefire. Talking to a parliamentary commission, Ledrian said everyone needs to understand that stopping hostilities is in their interest. Armenia says Foreign Minister Zohrab Natsakanyan will also visit Moscow on Monday. However, the Foreign Ministry ruled out Natsakanyan's meeting with Azeri counterpart Ceyhun Bayramov. Meanwhile, Bayramov is meeting international mediators today in Geneva.
Kyrgyz security forces have demanded all the political parties sit down for talks and restore the rule of law. In a statement, the National Security Committee said the forces will not be used as a tool by any party. Kyrgyzstan's parliament has so far failed to gather a quorum in an overnight session, leaving a power vacuum in the country. Earlier, Kremlin said it had obligations under an existing security treaty to prevent the situation from totally breaking down. The Central Asian nation has been gripped by instability since parliamentary elections on Sunday. Government critics and the opposition parties say the elections were marred by rigging. In the U.S., a vice presidential debate, a Republican candidate, Mike Pence, and Democratic challenger Kamala Harris have clashed over Trump's handling of the coronavirus. More about the debate in this report.
Kamala Harris, who made her own unsuccessful run for the presidency, faced enormous pressure as she took the biggest political stage of her life. Harris went straight after President Donald Trump's record on healthcare, economy to climate change, and foreign policy. She said the Americans have witnessed the greatest failure in the country's history.
They knew what was happening and they didn't tell you. Can you imagine if you knew on January 28th, as opposed to March 13th, what they knew, what you might have done to prepare? They knew and they covered it up. The president said it was a hoax. They minimized the seriousness of it.
Responding, Vice President Pence defended the Republican administration and blamed China for the pandemic.
But I want the American people to know that from the very first day, President Donald Trump has put the health of America first.
Pence also criticized Kamala Harris and Joe Biden, who have promised to mandate masks on federal property and encourage the practice nationwide.
We now know, because of great investigative journalism, that Donald Trump paid $750 in taxes. When I first heard about it, I literally said, "You mean $750,000? And it was like, no, $750. We now know Donald Trump owes and is in debt for $400 million.
The debate stood in stark contrast to last week's chaotic presidential debate between President Trump and Democratic nominee Joe Biden. It was the only vice presidential debate of the campaign, with Biden and Trump due for a rematch on 15th and 22nd of October.
Yemen's armed forces say they have captured a key military base from Houthi rebels in the northern province of Jawf. A spokesperson for Yemen's army says Saudi-led Arab coalition supported the operation. The spokesperson said the development is a heavy blow to Houthi rebels' control of northern Yemen. He said coalition carried out precise airstrikes, destroying Houthis' positions. The spokesperson said the raid paved the way for forces to storm the base and kill dozens of rebels in the fighting. Houthis have not yet commented on the claims. Earlier, the coalition destroyed a drone fired by the rebels towards the Saudi Arabia's southern city of Najran. The United Arab Emirates has reiterated its support for a two-state solution to the Israel-Palestine conflict. Minister of International Cooperation Reem Binte Ibrahim Al-Hashmi said the UAE-Israel deal will benefit the Palestinians. Al-Hashmi met with several Israeli officials to discuss the opportunities for cooperation in wake of the historic deal. At the meeting, both the sides pledged to reinforce bilateral relations for mutual benefit. They also discussed cooperation in the fight against COVID-19. The Israeli Ministry for Regional Cooperation said it is focused on economic cooperation with countries in the region. Turkey says its military presence in Qatar improves the peace and stability of the Gulf region. Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan is in Qatar on an official visit. In an interview, Erdogan said only the troublemakers in the region are disturbed by the Turkish presence in the Gulf. About the Nagorno-Karabakh issue, Erdogan said Armenia attempts to falsely show Turkey is involved in the conflict. The president said it depicts Armenia's confinement and despair. Erdogan said Ankara's presence in Syria seeks to permanently end the crisis. The Turkish president said Ankara doesn't want to occupy Syrian territory. He said Turkey's determination in the Mediterranean has forced the regional players to pay heed to Ankara's calls for talks. Greece says Turkey must step back from reopening an abandoned beach resort in northern Cyprus. In a statement, a government spokesman said Athens and Nicosia will bring the issue before a meeting of the EU leaders. He said the reopening of an area in the abandoned town of Varosha was incongruous with the decision at an EU meeting. Northern Cyprus reopened part of the beach resort that had been abandoned since the 1974 conflict on the divided island. Tensions between Turkey and Greece escalated recently over the rights to key resources in the eastern Mediterranean. Kuwait's new Crown Prince, Sheikh Mishal Al-Ahmad Al-Sabah, has taken the oath of office in the parliament. The prince has pledged the Gulf Arab states' commitment to democracy and peace. In a televised remark, Sheikh Mishal said Kuwait will uphold its regional and international commitments. The prince said he will raise the banner of popular participation and promote tolerance to shun division. Earlier, the parliament unanimously endorsed Sheikh Mishal for the role. Police and demonstrators clashed in the Indonesian capital of Jakarta for the third day of protests over a new job law. Hundreds of demonstrators gathered near the presidential palace, shouting and throwing stones. The police responded by firing tear gas in an attempt to disperse the crowd. The government says the new law is necessary to attract investment, but critics view it as pro-business. In the past 2 days, Indonesian police have arrested nearly 400 demonstrators. The new job creation law is expected to bring radical changes to Indonesia's labor system. The demonstrators say the new law will cripple the labor rights and harm the environment. The UN has condemned an attack that killed 25 internally displaced people in Burkina Faso on the 4th of October. In a statement, UN Refugee Agency's representative said civilians seeking safety are paying with their lives instead. The UNHCR reported an armed group attacked a convoy of 46 people in the central northern Burkina Faso. It said the militants separated the men from the group and executed them. The official said the UNHCR is dejected by news of this brutal act. He said a UN partner, ICAHD, has been providing the survivors with psychological support. Mali's military junta has released 12 people, including former Prime Minister, held after the 18th August coup in the country. In a statement, the coup group announced the release of former Defense Minister, civilians and military officers. The National Council for the Salvation of the People is responsible for the military coup in Mali, which invited severe backlash from the world. Mali's interim Prime Minister announced a new cabinet 2 days earlier, leading to lifting of some sanctions from the country. But West African leaders have demanded the dissolution of CNSP for the complete removal of sanctions. A former U.S. police officer charged with murdering George Floyd has been released from jail in Minneapolis. A spokesperson for the Minnesota Department of Corrections confirmed he is no longer in their custody. The court records show Derek Chauvin posted a $1 million bond for conditional bail. Conditions include prohibitions against working in law enforcement and contact with Floyd's family. Chauvin is also required to surrender any licenses or permits for firearms. The former police officer is charged with second and third degree murder in Floyd's death. In a statement, attorney for Floyd's family said Chauvin's release is the reminder that they are still far from achieving justice. New Zealand Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern's party is projected to be one seat short of being able to govern alone. An opinion poll shows the party has a double-digit lead over its rival. Labour Party's leader and Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern's popularity has taken a 4% hit. Ardern said she is keeping an eye on the polling, but she is pretty happy with the numbers. The opposition National Party has slipped down by 1 percentage point at 32%. Speaking to Reporters opposition leader Judith Collins said she believes it is still anybody's race. The EU Commission has signed a contract with the US drug maker Gilead for the supply of up to 500,000 treatment courses for remdesivir. The Commission says there are 37 signatories to the agreement. It says the signatories include all EU countries, the UK, 6 Balkan candidates, and potential members of the bloc. In a statement, Gilead said a joint procurement agreement will enable rapid and equitable access to remdesivir in Europe. It said the agreement covers purchases of remdesivir over the next 6 months and can be extended. European countries are currently using remdesivir for treating COVID-19 in adults and patients with pneumonia. Gilead said it will begin fulfilling orders from October the 12th. More stories to follow, but right after a short break. Stay tuned. Welcome back. The global tally of coronavirus cases has surpassed 36 million with over 1 million fatalities. India has registered 971 deaths and over 78,000 new cases overnight. How the virus is wreaking havoc around the globe, let's take a look at this report.
Coronavirus cases and deaths continue to rise across the globe as nations ramp up struggles to contain the spread. The Americas remain the theater with grimmest COVID-19 pictures. The US continues to lead the world in coronavirus numbers with more than 7.5 million infections and over 211,000 deaths. However, President Donald Trump has called the COVID-19 disease a blessing from God for him.
I view it different. It's a cure. For me, I walked in, I didn't feel good. A short 24 hours later, I was feeling great. I wanted to get out of the hospital. And that's what I want for everybody. I want everybody to be given the same treatment as your president, because I feel great. I feel like perfect. So I think this was a blessing from God that I caught it. This was a blessing in disguise.
In Latin America, Oxfam's regional director says the COVID-19 has dragged millions of people from the middle classes back to below the poverty line. Over the past 60 days, 11 countries and territories in the Caribbean have moved from moderate to the intense transmission of the virus. Brazil has passed the mark of 5 million confirmed cases. The country approaches the 150,000 deaths in the second most deadly coronavirus outbreak outside the US.
Brazil this week reaches the sad mark of 5 million COVID-19 cases. That number is much greater due to low testing levels and the under-notification of the disease. Very soon we will reach 150,000 deaths, a frightening number. With regards to this, we are seeing the authorities easing social distancing more and more, despite the number of cases.
Meanwhile, in Europe, France has reported over 18,000 new cases, a new high in single-day infections. Italy has imposed new restriction measures as infections in the country rose to 62,000. Czech Republic has also reported more than 5,000 new cases, highest one-day tally since pandemic started.
In Pakistan, the number of COVID-19 active cases have reduced to 8,015. The Health Ministry says out of over 316,000 countrywide cases, more than 302,000 have recovered so far. The ministry said 9 more people have lost their lives to the virus overnight, which raises the death toll to 6,544. It said 583 people tested positive in a day. The ministry said over 139,000 cases have been detected in the Sindh province, while over 100,000 have been reported in Punjab so far. The National Command and Operations Centre says 76 COVID-19 patients across the country are on ventilators. Pakistan is remembering the victims of the October the 8th earthquake in 2005 that killed over 80,000 people. More than 4 million people were displaced by the 7.6 magnitude earthquake that shook the nation. The earthquake was among the deadliest to ever hit the region. In some places, whole sections of towns slid off cliffs and entire families were killed. The Muzaffarabad in Azad Jammu and Kashmir suffered severe devastation. The town of Balakot in the northern Khyber Pakhtunkhwa province was almost completely destroyed. Damage also was reported in northern India and Afghanistan. American poet Louise Gleish has won the 2020 Nobel Prize in Literature. The Swedish Academy said her poetry focuses on themes such as death, childhood, and family life. She is the first American woman to win the Nobel Prize for Literature in 27 years. A professor at the Yale University, Gleish is seen as one of the most prominent poets in American contemporary literature. Nobel Prizes for Medicine, Physics, and Chemistry were awarded earlier this week. The Peace Prize will be announced tomorrow. Hurricane Delta has re-strengthened into a Category 2 storm in the Gulf of Mexico. The U.S. National Hurricane Center said the storm could become a major hurricane tonight. The center said the hurricane will move over the central Gulf of Mexico later today with winds of 100 miles per hour. Earlier, the hurricane passed through Mexico's top Caribbean resort, Cancun, causing less than fair damage. Thousands of residents and tourists have already been retreated into shelters. Troops cleared the roads as fallen trees partially blocked access to Cancun's strip of five-star hotels. The Miami-based weather forecaster said the hurricane is projected to move inland on the U.S. Gulf Coast by Friday night. The European Parliament has voted in favor of the EU climate law. The legislation calls for 60% reduction in greenhouse gases by 2030. The vote also approved a requirement by the EU to remove as much carbon dioxide as it produces every year. The Parliament also pledged more ambitious goals to be climate neutral by 2050. Lawmakers hope that the cut will put pressure on countries to keep the target above 55%. The European Council, under the presidency of Germany, must also ratify the goal. A World Championship surfer had a close encounter with a shark in New South Wales, Australia. A patrol drone belonging to lifeguards at Sharp Beach captured the close call. The footage shows Matt Wilkinson paddling on his board as a shark surfaces behind him, later turning away. In a press release, Wilkinson said he heard a splash while cruising but could not see anything. He added the drone then came down and told him that there was a dangerous shark in the area. The drone footage is part of a new program for lifeguards designed to monitor sharks and alert beachgoers of any danger. A British auction house sells the skeleton of Stan for $31.8 million. Stan is one of the largest known Tyrannosaurus rexes. The pre-sale estimate for Stan was thought to come in around $8 million. Stan is 40 feet long and 13 feet high. He is also notable for two fused vertebrae scientists have identified in his neck. The vertebrae suggest the dinosaur broke his neck and survived during his lifetime. Most T-Rex skeletons are held by museums and private institutions. The auction house, Christie, says it was an opportunity for a private collector or institution to acquire the bones. The anonymous winning bid was received over the phone. European stocks are trading higher, with investors keeping an eye on ongoing stimulus discussions in the US. The major averages rose sharply after President Donald Trump tweeted support for aid to airlines and other stimulus measures. The pan-European stock 600 climbed marginally in early trade. Travel and leisure stocks jumped up more than 1.5%. Frankfurt's DAX rose by almost 0.5%. CAC 40 in Paris also advanced fractionally. Italy's FTSE MIB rose by just above 0.5%. Earlier, stocks in the Asia-Pacific also traded higher, with only Hong Kong Hang Seng lagging among regional markets. And now the weather situation from around the globe. And that's all for now. With the latest updates, you can follow us on social media at Indus.News.